Okay, you are live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Annapolis Board of Appeals special virtual meeting for October 18th, 2023. This meeting is being broadcast on the City of Annapolis YouTube channel. My name is Bob Gallagher, Chair of the Board. This virtual format allows the public to observe the meeting through the video link and to submit comments through the City of Annapolis website. Links to the YouTube channel, the comment form on the city's website, and links to the database where case information can be found will all be on the agenda for the meeting tonight. The folks that you see on the screen are the members of the Board of Appeals. When a case is called, representatives of the parties to the case will also appear. Also participating in the meeting are our recording secretary, Kim Consoli, our broadcast technician tonight, Madeline. Also participating will be representatives of the City Attorney's Office, Board Counsel, and various members of the planning and zoning staff, including Jacqueline Rouse, who is the liaison from the Planning and Zoning Department to the board. Any public comments received by noon today in matters before the board this evening have been made provided to the board will be made part of the record in that case. We ask everyone but the members of the board to mute their audio. If anyone else wishes to speak during the meeting, please raise your hand and I will recognize you. Let me remind everyone that communication with the board about any case by anyone other than a party to a case must go through the comment form on the city's website. All communications by parties to a case with the board or any member of the board must go through Jackie Rouse, board liaison. No one should contact any member of the board directly about any case. So we'll begin with calling of the roll. Kim, would you like to do that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Chen,
Present.
Mr. Hector. Mr. Chairman, he said that he was going to attend. I don't
Okay.
see him yet.
Okay. And I
Mr.
think,
Zazali,
Mr. Zazali probably won't make it, and Mr. Walsh has been delayed. So until one of the other members of the board arrives, we are without a quorum. So we won't be able to approve the agenda or the minutes. So there are two cases on the agenda tonight. One involves an appeal that's been before the board before relating to the loss at Eastport Landing, and the other is an application for a variance from the critical area rules for an addition of a garage and maybe some other things to a house over in Wardour. As the parties to the appeal case will recall from the notice that I sent out to them earlier, this evening's proceedings in that case are basically in the nature of clarifying the issues and working on a schedule to get the case in shape for the board to have a hearing and on the merits and a determination in the case as soon as we can. So we're not going to, because we're not making any decisions there, if it's all right with the parties, we'll proceed on the basis of trying to work through the issues and the schedule as the first item tonight. There won't be any votes on it. So we've got the appellant represented by Mr. Rogers, by Mr. Hartman. We've got the appellee represented by Mr. Hyatt. And we have someone representing the city, Jackie?
That would be me, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. I didn't see you there, Trip. Good. Okay, so are the three of you, counsel for the parties in this case, willing to proceed about talking about how we're going to get this case up to a hearing on the merits?
I only see myself. I don't see Mr. Hyatt or Mr. Hartman on the call.
Yeah, they're there.
Are they? Okay.
All right. Have you? Oh, well, maybe Madeline hasn't brought them in yet. Madeline, would you like to bring in Mr. Hartman, Mr. Hyatt?
Sure, give me just 1 second.
Good evening, Mr. Gallagher. Ed Hartman here. Mr. Rogers is to my right.
I recognize both of you. Thank you. And do we have Mr. Hyatt?
I saw him earlier.
Sorry, I don't have an agenda with the attendees on it. Who else needs to be admitted?
Alan Hyatt.
Okay, I'm promoting him now.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Alan Hyatt on behalf of the applicants or appellee, whatever you
Yes,
choose to
Mr.
call it.
Hyatt, I recognize you as well. Mr. Hyatt, Mr. Hartman, were you able to listen to the last few minutes? No.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hyatt,
Yes, I did.
so you know where we are. Are each of you willing to proceed on that basis?
Yeah, just to clarify, you want to try to set a schedule for a hearing on the merits. Is that what I understand? I have my
Yes.
calendar.
That's right.
That's
Right.
fine.
No, I understand that. Yeah, so this is more of a scheduling conference as opposed to a hearing, so you don't need the quorum, right?
That's the thought. And we can go, and whatever, if we decide something, we can go over it later in the meeting when we have a quorum. So are you all right with that, Mr. Hyatt?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what I'd like to accomplish is a little discussion and see we're all on the same page of what the issues are before the board. And then I'd like to talk about a process and a schedule for finalizing the record in the case. You'll recall that under the recent amendments, appeals to the board from determination by the director are on the merit or on the record rather than hearing de novo. And then a process and a schedule for seeing if we can come up with some agreed facts that will make the hearing go much more smoothly. And finally, to schedule a briefing and a hearing on the merits of the issues, which I would hope we will be able to do in November. So starting with the issues, let me start with Mr. Hartman. What I've got in front of me is an appellant's motion to recognize appeal. So the charter of the Board of Appeals is to hear appeals from decisions of the director. The director made a decision when he issued a certificate of adequate public facilities. And he made another decision when he told you that the notice of appeal Mr. Rogers had filed was untimely. Mr. Rogers filed a request for an extension, and I'm not sure what the disposition of that was. So what, in your view, is the issue before us?
I guess there are two. There is the procedural issue that you just identified, which was that Mr. Smith, who is oddly enough also the opposing party, made a procedural determination as to whether or not the documents filed by Mr. Rogers were timely. And then subsequently obviously we contend that the notices that Mr. Rogers filed were timely and brought clear notice to the city of his appeal of that determination of adequate facilities. So that's the procedural issue. The merits are a little more substantial and go into each of the elements of adequate facilities and why
Yeah,
each one
yeah, we're
was
not gonna get
inadequate. I wasn't going to go into that tonight.
Mr. Hyatt, what's your view on where we are procedurally?
I think there's only one thing that can be appealed, and that is Tom Smith's decision. And that decision was made August 11th. And that decision was to reject Mr. Rogers's attempt at an appeal. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Fulton, have any views?
I share the same views as Mr. Hyatt.
Mr. Hartman's characterization of you as the opposition seemed a little surprising to me. Is that your view? I think Mr. Hyatt's certainly the opposition. Is the city in opposition to anybody here?
I wouldn't necessarily label it as an opposition, but the city's standing by the director's decision. And I agree with Mr. Hyatt that that decision was made by Mr. Smith on August 11th, and it was sound.
All right, so it sounds like we have agreement to cut through whatever the procedural questions here about what's being appealed. And there's agreement that what the board will decide is whether the appeal was timely. And included in that, I guess, would be whether an extension should have been granted. Do you have a problem with that, Mr. Hyatt?
That's probably all lumped together with whether there's an appropriate appeal, a timely appeal.
Good, that's great. Okay, so as I mentioned, since the changes a year or so ago that make these appeals something for the board to determine on the record, that always raises the issue of what's the record in the case. And well, generally, I think deciding what's the record in the case is up to the director, because the record is supposed to reflect the basis of the director's decision. Experience tells us that it's not always that simple. So, Mr. Hyatt, Mr. Hartman, you've both received the director's determination of what's in the record, have you? It's just a list. He sent out a list of documents that he called the record.
Well, it's a little unclear to me what that record was supposed to constitute, because I think this was just a procedural hearing tonight on the issue of timeliness of the appeal. And we disagree with obviously a lot of what was said. So I don't believe that the record.
So you're correct. Thank you. We don't really have a record on the timeliness, do we?
Right. And we don't have a full record really also with the underlying merits of the sub appeal.
We'll get to that. Okay. So good point. So let's think about how we're going to resolve that. Let me look at a calendar here. Mr. Fulton, Mr. Smith, or whoever wants to chime in. Today is the 18th. How long will it take you to designate the record on the narrower issue of the basis for the director's decision that the appeal was untimely? And implicit in that no extension was appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure it would take all that much time, because respectfully, on the narrow issue as to whether or not Mr. Rogers' appeal was timely, the documents and the files which were transmitted by Mr. Smith, as I understand them, constitute the entire record for that narrow issue. As Mr. Hartman alluded to, obviously there's no record relating to the underlying decision approving this or issuing the certificate of adequate public facilities. I'm not sure what else there is to add on the issue of whether or not.
That's fine.
There are six
that's your decision.
exhibits that I submitted for tonight's hearing that need to be part of the record because they
All
constitute
right, let me interrupt you.
emails.
So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like to give you a week to exchange with each other any documents that you think are part of the record but have not been included in that designated by Mr. Smith, and a short statement of why. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And how procedurally would you like those submitted to Ms. Rouse again?
Yeah,
or to
through
Mr. Smith?
Jackie, please.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I thought there were some things that might be part of the record that I didn't see. For example, Mr. Rogers refers to in his August 8th notice of appeal and attached appeals matter. I don't know whether that actually was attached, but it didn't appear in my version of what Mr. Smith sent us. Another example would be, I don't think I saw anything in what Tom sent around that indicates when was the first notice that the public had of the June 30 certification. And it seems like that's something that the director should have considered. If he didn't, that's fine, but we should know that. And then next, I'd like you to see, so if we have a week for that, that would be the 26th. By the 1st, I'd like you to see if you can agree among yourselves, Mr. Fulton, Mr. Hartman, and Mr. Hyatt, on as many, a statement of undisputed relevant facts. That'll reduce the fuss when we actually do have hearing. And hearings should, in an appeal on the record, ought to be confined to legal arguments. So I think we need to get these facts sorted out before. All this arises because of the lack of clarity on what should be in the record. And that's not unreasonable that we have that lack of clarity if we're working under a new statute. So if that works for you all, I don't see why we couldn't have argument on the merits of timeliness at our meeting on November 7th.
So Bob, I have a question. So so that we would just be holding this open until November 7th? Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes,
It would not need to be re-advertised?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
Just FYI, that's election day. I don't know if that affects whether you have a hearing that day or not.
Yes, good point. We usually, as a matter of civic responsibility, don't have hearings on election day.
What election is that?
Well, my calendar says November 7th is election day. I don't know.
Yeah,
Well-
right. I can't think of any elections.
There's
relevant.
no election around here.
And
It's
I'm
election day
just-
somewhere, but not here.
Not this
Yeah, okay.
year. right.
Next year is the bad
Good.
news.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. All right, so we don't
I
have to
don't know
worry
why
about
mine
that.
says that. Okay, so Tuesday, November 7th at same time, 7 o'clock in the evening.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, we're going to hear another case later tonight, and we may If we don't dispose of that, we may have to take that up before this, but it wouldn't take long. All right,
And can you just tell me what the deadline for them to submit any additional information for that hearing is?
okay, the first deadline is the 25th, and that is going to be for Mr. Hyatt, well, for any of the parties, to tell us about anything that they think needs to be included in the record that's not already there, and why.
Okay,
The second deadline is the 1st of November, and at that point, council will advise us of a set of undisputed stipulated facts that they've agreed to, that we will be able to refer to and rely on at our argument on November 7th.
okay, it's about just, I know this seems kind of petty, but we've had a problem with it recently. So when we say the deadline is November 1st, we're saying the morning, the end of the day, 4:30, November 1st. I mean, we need to specify because we do have
COV. Close of
close
business.
of business, which is 4:30. Okay.
That's right. I wouldn't expect any of these distinguished counsel to be trying to file things at 11:59.
Oh,
We would
really?
never do that, would
Okay.
we, Al?
I don't stay up that late.
Just to
I know
be clear
4:30 is
that-
not the close of our business, though.
Well, 4:30 is the close of our business, but if you can
I
get
know.
your stuff in earlier that day, that would also be appreciated because then it can be forwarded to the, to whoever has to go to this that morning and not have to wait until the next day,
Okay.
as you
All right,
know.
But you're asking, Mr. Chairman, all parties to agree on a stipulation by that date?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not independent submittals, that's collaborative, right? Is
I'd
that what
like you to
you're-
collaborate, yeah.
Okay. All right.
And to the extent you're not able to collaborate, I'll know what is in dispute based on the things you've asked to be included in the record.
Okay.
Nadine, does it all make sense to you?
Yes, very much.
Okay, so as I said, we're waiting for a third member of the board to join us for a quorum so we can take up another case. We expect that'll be Mr. Hector or Mr. Walsh, and I'll go over this with them, and I don't see there'll be any issues. And under our rules, the chair decides these procedural things anyway, so. So my point is that if you'd like to be excused, counsel and Mr. Rogers, you may be excused.
Thanks. Mr. Hyatt, we'll reach out to you tomorrow and get started.
That's fine. Okay, very good.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate you hearing us tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night.
So we're going to take a recess in the public hearing until about 7:45 with the hope that we will have
Oh,
a
gotta
quorum
put this
at
down.
that time.
Would
So
you
for those
like
of
to-
you who haven't had your dessert and coffee yet, this is a good time to do it.
Mr. Chairman, I have recently, in the past 5 minutes, heard from Mr. Hector. He is not able to attend tonight, although he planned to.
All right, we're still expecting Mr. Walsh about 7:45.
Mr. Chair, would you like to go off live and back on at 7:45 or just stay on?
We don't want to lose anyone. So I ask
Is
for
there
your-
some screen that can be put up that says, we'll reconvene at 7:45? Like they do for city council when they take a break, or do we just, is that possible, Madeline?
It is not. We don't
Okay.
have them preloaded, and the capabilities on Zoom are a little bit different.
Okay, So there isn't anybody who could just put something up in screen share that says we will reconvene at 7:45? Mike?
I mean, that's a possibility. I could, in theory, do that.
Okay, well, that might not be a bad, I mean, that, if that's possible and it's not too difficult, that would be nice. But if it's too difficult, I think we should just stay on or whatever.
Yeah, well, right. And I mean, Madeline really has to stay on anyway unless we can. put that-
Right, right. Everybody can just, stop their videos and,
Someone has to be there to let Mike in when he gets back. I apologize, Madeline. We usually are better organized and often done by this time.
That's okay. Would you like a very quickly typed slide that says Annapolis Board of Appeals will reconvene at 7:45, or would you just like everyone to turn off their video?
It'll be nice if you could put that up.
Okay, I will do that.
Great, thanks. Yes, sir. I don't know. I don't know if we have one. No, I'm not. I got turned around when I went up there today and realized it was the wrong day, so I went over there. Michael, thank you.
You're welcome, Bob. I'm glad we were able to work it out. Sorry.
You're a
Chris,
hero.
Did I miss much in the first few minutes?
No, we went over with the lawyers on the appeal. Alan
Yeah.
Hyatt for the developers, Ed Hartman for the Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, yeah.
Worked out a couple of things. We agree that the issue in front of us right now is the timeliness of the appeal, whether it can go ahead or not. They are going to provide us by a week from today the list of anything they think should have been included in the record that wasn't. Because you'll recall our appeals are all in the record now.
Yeah.
And
right.
then a week after that, they're going to provide us with the results of a good faith effort among them to stipulate facts that we'll have in front of us. And we'll try to hear the merits, the argument on the merits at our November meeting.
Yeah, what's the date on that? I want to make sure I have that.
I believe it's the 7th.
The 7th, okay. I'll make sure I,
No, it's 8th.
I think I do have it in, yeah, actually. Yeah,
8th.
the 8th, then
Oh,
Wednesday.
no, it's
okay.
7th. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
7th.
I thought it was.
7th.
Yep, 7.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Jackie, are you back with us? I'm talking to Jackie Rouse.
I'm here.
Thank you.
I was having
Madeline,
trouble
would-
getting my.
Madeline,
unmute
would you like to
door.
put us back in the game here? And we can bring in the parties to the variance 2023-0011.
0,
7 Loudon Lane.
3011.
Oh, what happened? Like,
That's too many zeros.
That's too many
And-
zeros,
Right.
yes.
do we
Madeline,
need
that
to-
would, that includes Mike Meekins. He's the project planner.
Right,
do we
Okay.
need to approve the agenda and the minutes? and all
Yeah,
that?
we will get to that right now.
is that Spire Architects?
yes, it is. Fire's on that.
Okay, Kim Consoli, if you're there, will you note that Mr. Walsh has joined us and that we now have a quorum?
I will, sir.
Thank you. So have the members of the board had a chance to review the agenda for this evening's meeting? Are there any corrections or additions? If not, is there
I
a
move
motion
to approve the agenda.
I second.
All in favor?
I,
Thank you. And then I believe we have the minutes of October 3rd. Any additions or corrections there? If not, is there a motion to approve?
so moved.
I'm a second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Okay. So if we have the appropriate parties before us,
But Bob, I think we still need Mike Meekins,
okay?
who's the project planner. And is Tim Ball the applicant?
It is Maria McKenna and Tim Newbury.
Okay, there's a Tim Ball on the, in the waiting room. I don't know who he's here for, but Mike will probably know. Or-
He's a
on-
contractor for the applicant.
Okay, so he should probably be promoted also.
For this agenda item?
Yeah.
Uh-huh, and Mike.
Mike is
Sam.
already in the meeting. Michael, if you unmute yourself on your phone, you should be able to talk.
Oh, he's in here twice, so that's why I was confused. Okay.
All right, have we got everyone now, Madeline?
I believe so. Again, I don't have an agenda with the
Okay,
attendees for each item, so.
all right, so the board with a quorum will now take up a variance application by Maria W. McKenna, trustee Timothy Newberry for a disturbance in the steep slopes buffer to construct a garage addition and 2 decks on the property at 7 Loudon Lane. That's variance application 2023-00011. So Jackie, will that be you or Mike to introduce the case for us?
It's Michael's case and he will be introducing it.
All right, Michael.
Can't hear you.
All right, now we see him.
Michael, on your phone, did you press *6?
I think we have sound.
The Zoom interface says that you're unmuted. That's all I can see.
Well, we heard him close the door.
No,
Say
that was
something,
somebody
Michael.
else. That was somebody else.
That was Britt Collins.
Sorry. All right, Michael, say something once more. Michael.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Not coming through.
No.
Perhaps he should sign out and sign in again.
Mike, did you hear, if you heard that, that's probably a good idea, isn't it, Stephanie? I mean, Madeline.
It looks like he might have already left to try that.
Yeah, I think he did.
Okay.
Speak. Okay.
All right, Mike, can you hear us? Can you say something?
He's not been promoted yet. He's still not a panelist yet. He's in the attendee room.
No, he is in as a panelist. We were having audio
Okay.
issues earlier, so he also called in on the phone, and the phone can't be admitted as a panelist, but he does have permission to talk on both of them, so that's not the issue. I'm texting
Okay.
now to see if I can suggest another solution.
Okay. Perhaps, Bob, we could just proceed with the case, and then if Michael does join us and he wants to add something, he could. I know that's not how we normally do it, but
Yeah.
I would pull up the staff report, but in the new InterGov system, I don't know that we can even load staff reports in there. I'm trying to pull it up right now.
Hey, Jackie, it's Kim. I know a little bit about this case and what his recommendations are. If somebody wanted to go over what the proposed work is, if he can't talk by then, I can tell you what the city recommendations are at the
Okay.
end of this.
Well, we've read the staff report and
Right.
recommendation.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's probably a pretty straightforward case.
So,
Okay.
can someone on behalf of the city tell us whether the city is concluded that notice and publication requirements have been satisfied?
Yes, we have concluded that they have been satisfied.
And have there been any public comments?
To my knowledge, there have been no public comments received.
No, there haven't been any.
Okay, so now we'll give the applicant an opportunity to be heard. I noticed that you've got a cast of dozens there. Let me remind you that everyone on the board has read the city's report and recommendations, as well as all the attachments, which include your application and its attachments, or at least most of them. I'd ask you to be as brief as possible and just address anything that you need to know, that we think we need to know that wasn't adequately covered in those documents, and it relates directly to the specific requirements for granting a variance. Who would like to be heard?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Tim Newberry. I'm the owner, and just to say thanks for taking the time on this. We've got to cast a dozen.
Mr. Chairman, do you need to swear them in or? No,
Yeah, good. Thank you, Nadine. Would each of the representatives of the applicant who will have something to say tonight, please affirm that you, subject to the penalties for perjury, everything you testify to tonight will be true to the best of your knowledge.
Yes, sir.
Wave of the hand or shake of the head will be good.
Yes, sir.
I do.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Mr. Dewberry. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Tim Newberry, just thanks to the board for considering this case. We've got the dozens on here to support me because this is my first time and hopefully last time going through this process for 7 Loudon Lane that I'm extremely excited to be building a family home there. I've been living in the greater Annapolis area since the 1996 or so when I showed up to the Naval Academy. Got 3 kids. I'm very excited to be going through this process and working with this team from Mike Gillespie and Craig and the builder Tim Ball and with help with Britt. So thanks for hearing us out.
Sure. Is there anything else that any of your service providers would like to tell us?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike, please.
Hi, my name is Mike Gillespie. I work for the Atwell Group, who was formerly Bay Engineering. So the plans are under the Bay Engineering name. I just, if it would be okay with the board, I'd just like to give a quick overview of where we are and then address the conditions in Mr. Meekin's report.
Okay.
So Mr. Newberry came to us, we took the survey, we identified the steep slopes, and as noted in Mr. Meekin's report, you know, the site has unusual circumstances that cause the slope buffers to be into the existing dwelling for the large part. So Mr. Newberry and Spire worked to try to minimize the disturbances, and we worked diligently with Cynthia at the time to come up with a a plan that would make, not only the office happy, but, the board, when we came to this position, well, hopefully you all would agree. So we've actually reduced impervious with this proposal somewhat. And then, we've kept the garage is on existing lot coverage and the decks are going to be post-built. So the disturbance for the decks will be minimal. So we've really, the group really worked to try to minimize impacts. So I just wanted to go through the recommendations that Mr. Meekins provided. I wanted to thank him for his report. Like I said, we worked really hard to get to this point, and I think that was noted by staff, so we appreciate that. He recommended approval with conditions. The first condition regarded the width of the proposed steps on the larger of the two waterfront decks. Yes. I thought somebody said something, I'm sorry. Mr. Newberry agreed that we will reduce the steps to a 6-foot width coming down off the proposed deck should the variance be granted. The second was about the lot coverage. Now, the site in its current condition exists over the allowable lot coverage for the LDA portion of the site. The LDA portion of the site contains all the impervious. The RCA portion contains none. So, but you know, you have to break it down by critical area designation. So we're over by about 653 square feet, and Mr. Newberry and the team would be happy to take up the offer of the city staff to work with reducing that lot coverage during the permit process. The third item was tree assessment and planning, and Mr. Collins may speak towards this a little more, but we will absolutely work with the city arborist during the building and grading permit process, you know, to establish the viability of removing those trees, which are, you know, quite close to the dwelling. That's the reason for the removal. And then, of course, item number 4, we will acquire any permits necessary to allow Mr. Newberry to proceed with his dream home.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Questions from the board? This is more than the usual variance application, but then it's a variance not just under the city ordinances, but under the critical area rules.
Correct.
And the steep slopes, of course, are probably the most critical of the critical areas. So,
And I would like to point out, we're not disturbing any steep slopes. We're just disturbing the buffer. When the plan was laid out, that was our initial goal was to not disturb any slopes, and you know, we've worked to accomplish that.
Dr. Chen, any questions?
Yes, I'm not sure who can answer these questions, the city. I'm looking at Ms. Durant's letter, and she talks about discrepancies. I'm wondering if anybody can address that. Also, the issue of the trees, if somebody could address that. And then I'd like to hear about water runoff from the new structures that are being built, how that's going to be managed, if that's going to be a problem. And I believe it's a 3-car garage. Why a 3-car garage is needed.
Well, I can address the issues. I believe the discrepancies you're just talking about were between the with the stairs. Is that what you were just talking about?
It talks about lot coverage calculated for the property.
Oh, okay. I think, well, the latest plan we submitted to Mr. Meekins and to the city clarifies the LDA and RCA calculations. So they are presented on the site plan, and they have been spelled out. And I think Mr. Meekins noted that in his report, but if you look on the cover sheet of the plan, there's we have a breakdown of all the various lot coverages in the RCA and the LDA and what's allowed and, you know, what's required. And
Well, if somebody from the city could explain to me what Ms. Duran is talking about and how it's no longer a problem, please.
So if Mike is still not online.
I have Mike on the phone, and he's going to tell me, he's going to give me a response to Nadine's question, if she could repeat it, please.
Can
And
you
then
put him
I'll
on the
repeat it to
speaker?
you all.
Jackie, can you put him on the speaker?
can I put him on speaker? He's on speaker.
Yeah, I'm on speaker if you can hear me.
Yeah, if you could just speak a little more loudly.
Yeah, can you hear me now? I apologize for this technical glitch, everyone.
That's better.
All right, so Dr. Schitt, you could repeat your question. I will attempt to answer it.
In Ms. Durant's letter, she talks about a discrepancy in terms of the allowable lot coverage. And I would just like an explanation as to what she is referring to, and if it is still a problem. If it's not, why?
So my recollection, and I have the plans laid out, but the Critical Area Commission, I believe, received a set of plans that did not include the proposed coverage of the steps. And I believe the plans were then updated. I believe that's the discrepancy. I think the end result, though, is to achieve 15% within the LDA or less to meet the allowable coverage.
So she says, based on the information provided, the property exceeds the allowable lot coverage limit in the LDA by 653 square feet.
That is correct. And what I was referring to in my staff report is to reduce that coverage to be to come into the 15% compliance.
Okay, so how is it being reduced?
So the reduction is in two parts. One would be the reduction in the width of the proposed stairs, which Mr. Gillespie alluded to. And then the additional reduction would be in reconfiguration of the existing driveway. If you look at the site plan, there's a very large gravel driveway that conceivably could be reduced to come in to that 15% compliant. And that impervious area would be removed.
So that is in the plan now, the reduction.
So the reduction is not reflected in the plan that you have, but we are the planning and zoning is recommending the reduction would take place and would be ultimately permitted either at the building or grading permit stage to come into that 15% or less.
Okay. And then the trees, the 4 trees. I'd like an explanation as to why they need to come down.
Sure. Hi, how are you? Thank you for taking the time this evening. My name is Britt Collins. I'm the owner of Barrage Lawn and Landscape in partnership with CKA Tree Services. We're licensed arborists in the state of Maryland, as well as MHIC Home Improvement. And after doing a thorough investigation on all of the trees on the property, when Mr. Newberry purchased it, we deemed that there was 4 trees that are hazardous to the existing house and the proposed structure. There should be some photos attached to the letter we sent over. There's 3 trees that are covered up with ivy that are starting to die, as well as the roots are exposed to some runoff. So those are leaning towards the existing house, as well as 2 trees that are within 5 feet of the existing concrete foundation. So our recommendation would be to take those down prior or during construction. After a small discussion with the city of Annapolis, they recommended that we put the trees on the building and grading permit and remove the trees during the construction phase.
Can you, sorry, Nadine, do you have something that you can share on the screen that would show us the location of the trees?
Love to. Give me 1 second.
Thank you, Bob.
Let me see if I can share this.
Okay, go ahead. So Mike is going to also add something to that.
So
Bob?
yes, to further that testimony, in the staff report, under the recommendations number 3, the tree assessment would be further looked at, along with mitigation for any of the 4 trees, if any of the 4 trees would come down. Mitigation for those trees during the building and grading permit phase of this project, if it were to be approved in the variance hearing tonight.
And the city arborist would be reviewing that.
Correct. The city arborist would be reviewing that.
Can you guys see my screen? I have some photos of the trees in question.
That's one.
That's one. That's the one within a couple inches. The second one is the large spruce that's leaning towards the structure. That's about 8 feet or 6 to 8 feet from the corner of the driveway. So that's the 2. And then the other 2, it's a little bit hard to see in this picture, but you see the 3 taller spruces with ivy on them. The one is actually one tree. It's just V'd behind that little red maple. And then the other one to the left is a smaller one. And they're both kind of in a decaying state, covered up in ivy. All 2 or both of those trees are leaning towards the house as well. That's a picture from.
Could you go back to the photo, the first one you mentioned with the evergreen tree? What was it?
This white spruce.
Yeah. So we're looking at the water side of the house.
Correct.
And the lower level structure we see on the left is part of the house, and the garage will be built on the other side of that.
Correct.
And on this side of that lower structure, there will be deck, and it will connect to a deck that will be built in front on the water side of the main part of the house. Is that right?
Correct.
And so that tree is in the way of the deck.
I haven't seen that. That'd be a comment from Craig. I haven't seen the updated deck plan, but I believe that it'd be pretty close to, yeah.
Are any of the other trees in the way of the proposed additions, whether it's garage or the deck?
Those 2, no.
What about the 4th one?
The 4th one would be that tree that is about 6 inches from the existing foundation of the house.
That one you're looking at now?
Yes.
Yes.
That looks to me like it would be, isn't that right about where the connection between the 2 decks is going to be?
Just for clarification, Mr. Gallagher, I don't think we intend to have a connection on the decks. Or 2 separate decks, one off the back of the house and one off the back of that smaller structure.
That wasn't clear to me from the drawings.
I apologize. Greg, if you could comment in on that.
So that's the one tree. This is the same picture of that said tree. That the distance between the existing foundation and the base of that tree is about 6 inches.
And is it causing a problem with the foundation?
I believe so.
Is there somebody that might be able to confirm that of the group that's assembled?
Mr. Ball, could you comment on this, the foundation and just it being so close to the structure? And Ball.
I think that normally, that during when the city arborist reviews these plans as to whether or not the trees can be removed, and the applicant wants to make a case that it's somehow structurally damaging the foundation, they would be required as part of that process to provide some kind of a report to Mr. Adams in order to get approval to remove the tree.
Okay, well, Nadine, if I could interrupt yours for just a second. Let me ask our staff a couple questions that may focus our further questions here. So they don't need a variance for increasing the size of the house, is that right? For putting a second level on the house?
The variances are just for the work that's going on in the steep slopes. These are not setback variances.
Okay. And
Mike?
they do, or they? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so there are basically three targets in the variance. One being the variance for the garage, which is going over impervious coverage. The two other variance items are for both decks, all of which are in the expanded 25-foot steep slope buffer.
Okay.
They merely have mentioned the trees just because that's going to be an issue or potential issue within the permit process. But the variance that they're requesting is for the garage and 2 decks.
Okay, so they don't need a variance. They don't need anything from us to remove those trees.
That is correct.
All right. I'm sorry, Nadine. Why don't you help us pick up where you left off?
Well, I guess the tree issue is finished, correct?
Yeah.
Since they don't need us. So my last question has to do with management of runoff from these new structures that are being built.
Yes, I can, this is Mike Gillespie. I can answer that question. As part of the development of the plan, we provided and sized a dry well for the new runoff coming off of the rooftop. So all the rooftop runoff will go into a dry well and infiltrate into the ground.
And the decks?
They're drip through, so they're not considered impervious.
Okay. And then is it correct that it is a 3-car garage? And I
Yeah.
understand that it's being enlarged over impervious area already. I'm just curious.
Sorry, Dr. Chen, that was my big dog. Tim Newberry, the homeowner. It is a 3-car garage with the third bay being kind of on the smaller side. Just for a large family and a lot of things and a lot of sports, and we own 3 vehicles right now. And again, with the intent of keeping it on impervious and trying to be a good steward of how we're supposed to take care of the property, but also build that final home.
And lastly, because Christian is not here and he always asks this question, the variance that you're requesting is the minimum required?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just kind of go back to my old tried and true question when it comes to a variance. Mike, if I could ask you, Mike Meekins, I've read the report, but if you could just kind of go through your reasoning for why this variance application is, first of all, why the property is unique.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Walsh. So as I alluded to or tried to allude to in my staff report, this property is unique in a topographic sense mainly because obviously it's waterfront, and the property is situated such that there are two terraces of relative flat land. There's steep slopes that border perpendicular to the waterfront, either side of the property, with a band bisecting those two flat terraced areas. So when you apply the 100-foot buffer, it crosses not only the perpendicular slopes, but also the band that runs in between the two terraces. So with that in mind, you have to then expand the steep slope buffer to the top of the slope, plus 25 feet. When you do that, you basically wind up with an envelope that is either surrounding the existing house or, in some cases, already intruding that line into the existing house.
The structure.
So really, that's in my mind, that's where I'm saying it's unique, because it would be, it really lessens the developable potential of the property itself.
And there's no other, none of the other lots adjacent share that particular hardship? Or uniqueness?
I'm sorry.
Or uniqueness, I should say, as opposed to hardship.
Okay. Yeah. There are several other waterfront lots that are adjacent to this property that do have steep slope issues, but within the zone itself, there are a great number of lots that basically do not share these characteristics that 7 Loudon does.
Okay, going back down to your recommendations, and I just wanted to, I read Mr. Rand's letter as well that Dr. Chen referred to. The just so I have it straight in my mind, the issue of the, first of all, did Mr. Rand ever have a chance to see the revised plan that you spoke to earlier? I think you testified. You testified that that letter, Mr. Rand's letter, may have been reflective of a previous iteration of this proposal, and that there's been a revision since.
I think he's referring to the Critical Area Commission, correct?
The critical area letter. I'm sorry. Yes.
I do not know if they have seen the latest plan. With basically nothing in plan view changed. It was a adjustment in the calculations, and actually in the critical area report, their recommendation, which we echoed, was to reduce the impervious, and basically they spelled out the need for possibly a reduction in the width of these steps. Right. From large deck, and then coming into compliance with the 15% impervious in the LDA.
So your second recommendation, the condition you put on this approval would be that echoes the concerns that were raised in that letter.
That is correct, sir.
So, you could also add a condition that the plans have to go back, the revised plans, once these things have been done, have to go back to the Critical Area Commission for approval, if you chose to do that, even though, that is one possibility, but I think that her comments were pretty specific, correct, Mike?
That is correct, Jackie. Thank you.
But if
Thank
the
you, Chairman.
board would feel
That's all
more
I have.
comfortable, yeah, so.
Okay. How many houses on that street have 3-car garages? Anyone know?
I do not know off the top of my head.
I'm gonna pull up the Google Earth map and see if I can get a real good idea, but maybe Britt, you have an idea?
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with the community. We do a lot of work for the neighbors as well. I would say it's pretty normal for a house to have a 3 to 4 car garage there. I know the neighbor to the left has a 4-car garage, the adjacent neighbor to the left. We worked for them for a number of years, as well as the people across the street have 2 to 3, 4-car garages as well.
Okay, let me get to the decks. So the Critical Area Commission recommended that you reduce the width of the stairs going down from the larger deck. Any sense of why they did that?
Yeah, Chairman Gallagher, I can speak to that. Within the city, within the Critical Area Commission and Code, decks typically, the deck structure itself, typically with a 1/4 inch gap between deck boards, is considered pervious, i.e. drip through. Steps, however, staircases, however, are considered impervious because they don't allow that drip through. Now, you know, one could argue one way or the other, but that is just how it's written in the code. So therefore, their recommendation was to reduce the width of those stairs to reduce that impervious number related to the stairs and the deck, if that makes sense.
So one of the things we concern ourselves with is the impact of this on the environment and water quality. The decks are being built in the extended, for the most part, in the extended buffer. Correct me if I'm wrong. And while for lot coverage purposes, they are not considered impervious, they do affect what happens on the land and the buffer underneath them, and that there's not very much that grows there. So someone's raising their hand. What?
Yeah, hi, I'm Craig, one of the principals at Spire Architecture. One of the things of note, and again, this is more of a technical thing that Mike Gillespie can speak to. Part of the steep slopes that the decks are near is a man-made steep slope. It's a pretty shallow, in terms of height of steep slope. But because it's contiguous, that steep slope runs around and hits other steep slopes, which are kind of a natural steep slope, counts as part of the steep slopes. So, I mean, I guess technically the lot could be, graded out so it's more, a gentle slope instead of flat, steep slope and then flat. Typically, if this was a little steep slope part and not contiguous with other steep slopes, it wouldn't even be considered a steep slope. And again, the technical parts of that, Mike Gillespie, probably Mike Meekins can speak to very typically about how that, I guess, specifically works. But I'd argue that grading that out so that it wouldn't be technically a steep slope would be much more invasive to the land, and scraping that than putting 6 or 8 piers, a sonotube with a 6x6 sticking out of it. So again, technically it is in the steep slope buffer, but the steep slope buffer it's in is a man-made, very shallow, only by code because it's contiguous steep slope.
Yeah, and Mr. Meekins spoke to that in his report, that band of the slopes across where somebody terraced it probably, 100 years ago, created the top of the expanded buffer at the top of that strip of slopes. Everything we're doing is outside of the 100-foot buffer to the water. So, it's part of, as Mr. Meekins said, what makes this lot unique. That strip built whenever is what's causing the decks to even need a variance, in my opinion.
Okay.
The deck itself is hundreds of feet from the water. There's a big kind of flat area. So I'm more commenting on that the water quality, or that there would be any real significant difference in the way that the bay is being affected because of this deck being built where it is. I mean, it's very, very distant from a real steep slope. That's
But what evidence does the board have that not having 600 plus square feet of new decking is a hardship, and that it's the minimum necessary?
I'm
I
having a
don't,
problem hitting my unmute button. I apologize, sir. I mean, I've done a lot of waterfront properties over the years, and it's pretty standard that waterfront properties have some kind of deck to enjoy the benefits of living on the water. I mean, I think denying them the right to have a deck would generally be out of the character of most waterfront properties, in the city and elsewhere.
I think if we look at, I mean, I'm just looking at the Google Earth images here. Pretty typically to answer the 3-car garage, it looks about 50-50. Again, there's a lot of trees, but there are a lot of properties with 3-car garages. Some are 3-bay, some are a 2-bay with a 1-bay. And they're extensive, I guess, existing
What
decks.
about other decks? I'm looking for.
Same thing. There seem to be a lot of waterfront decks on the waterfront properties around this whole kind of point. I think I rejected the need to share my screen. Celine, if that's possible to do, I'm glad to share this and show kind of what I'm seeing. But again, I think to Mike's point, this is not a crazy amount of lot coverage for a deck. It's a reasonable across the back of the main part of the house. Again, what's the minimum amount of deck? This would allow a seating area and an eating area, which I think is a pretty reasonable request for a deck that, if there had not been a man-made steep slope, it's not an exorbitant covering the exorbitant parts. It is slotted wooden deck, so it essentially does not make lot coverage, which was spoken.
Will the garage have a living unit?
No,
No, sir.
the above area is occupiable, but it's not a separate dwelling unit or anything. I don't think it'd be a problem if it was, but and again, I guess Mr. Newberry can speak to the use, but it's not currently planned to have a kitchen or anything up there.
correct.
Colleagues, any other questions?
What is the purpose of the second deck? Following up on the chairman's question about 600 square feet of decking.
Dr. Chen, it's just to enjoy this home and that area. We're intending to have exercise facilities for my family, for our health, for our midshipmen that we sponsor, and to be able to have the ability to exercise off
On
the
the
back of that yes, ma'am. On the back of that garage, or on the back of that, what is current garage, to make a facility and to be able to open that door up and exercise in the fresh air.
The decks are not to be covered, is that right?
That's correct.
I'm trying to find, Mr. Chairman, in the Ms. Durant's letter, she was asking about some outside stairs. She wasn't sure what the purpose or how much coverage there is of these.
Those are the stairs from the deck from the.
Those
main
are deck
house.
stairs. Okay. Thank you. I have no other questions. Thank you.
And if it would be okay, I'd like to point out that the plans you all are looking at were revised to include the decks as lot coverage. Now, so, the overall plans is actually reducing lot coverage on the site as it sits, as you're looking at.
Yeah.
And I just think it's important to point out that the garage is being built entirely over top of existing driveway. So
the driveway is impervious, is that right?
Correct, yes.
And it's a large expansive driveway. Given any thought to converting at least some of that to pervious pavers?
Well, that's part of.
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's part of what we'd like to, we're addressing as one of the conditions that Mr. Meekins and the Critical Area Commission provided in their comments.
To reduce the impervious?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't believe there's a provision in the city code that requires it, but we're willing to do it. We're not, like I said, we're not increasing the lot coverage, so, we're reducing it a little bit and we're willing to reduce it more.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
Mr.
right.
Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Chen, are you on mute?
No. I'm not on mute.
Did you have something to say?
The reason I asked about the trees is because in number 3 in the recommendations, it discusses the trees. So I didn't know if that makes it a concern of ours or not.
Well, I'm not sure how anyone would answer that question any better than Mr. Meekins did, that they don't need a variance to do it.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
All right. Are we prepared to deliberate? Mr. Walsh, Dr. Chen? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll close the record. We'll admit all the documents that have been referred to. Those photographs, I don't think were in any of the packages that I got. I'd like those to be part of the record and admitted as well. So if the parties would see that Ms. Consoli gets copies of those. Who would like to start? Mr. Walsh, would you like to claim your senior privilege?
I suppose I will. To my two colleagues, what's going through my mind at the moment is I find the recommendations of staff to be somewhat mitigating to some of my concerns. I ask the questions I do get from what Mike Meekins said about the unique features to the property. Mr. Chairman, you asked about the hardship, and I'm not, we go through this discussion quite often when it comes to variances, is what constitutes a hardship. I have to say I'm not fully sold that the approval of this deck would alleviate the particular hardship that's being experienced right now on that property. Again, the conditions that are being suggested by the staff, particularly about conforming with the concerns that were referred to in the critical area commission letter, particularly recommendation 2, kind of alleviates a little bit of my concern about pervious and impervious. I'd like to hear what you think about that. I'm kind of inclined to I certainly would approve with the conditions and possibly entertain any others that might occur to us, but that's kind of where I am at the moment.
Dr. Chen?
Yeah, I typically look at whether there is in fact a hardship rather than a nice to have, which is why the second deck is of particular interest to me, to have an outside exercise area. Seems like not really a hardship, but a nice to have.
Good thing they don't need a variance for the movie theater.
I do agree with my colleague that the mitigations that have been taken in view of the Ms. Durant's comments are helpful. But I am a bit stuck on the hardship. And I am glad about the water retention, water takeaway methods.
Water runoff, yep.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Agreed.
Okay. Yeah, I think I don't know why the law doesn't recognize the impact of a pervious deck on the landscape, but it doesn't seem to do that. On the plus side, they will be complying with stormwater rules that are much more protective now than when the house was built, and overall that ought to be pretty positive development. The hardship, and I think the lot is unique, it's just the hardship piece that causes all of us pause, I think. And I have to remind myself that my perspective on this has to be a lot broader than my own experience. And if you look around that neighborhood, I think the testimony we've heard about the amenities of some of these other houses on very large lots, waterfront lots. And this looks to me from the photos to be an older house that's going to get substantial update. And you know, these are not unreasonable things that you would want to do when you update it. And as has been pointed out, we're not, other than the decks, which are considered pervious, they're not making any new incursion into the extended buffer. So you know, my vote, I think, would be to approve it. So any more discussion, or are we ready to vote?
I'm fine. I'm ready.
Is there a
Yeah.
motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that variance 2023-00011 that it be approved in that the applicant has met the criteria for a issuing of a variance, and that the variance is subject to the recommendations of staff as conditions as outlined in the staff report.
Is there a second for the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add to that motion that the board relies on the testimony given by those present, the witnesses present, especially with regard to other houses adjacent to this property, and that the size of the garage and the size of the deck are comparable to the other properties.
No, they've sworn subject to penalties for perjury. All right.
Kim, we were able to get all that into a condition. I want to make sure we have that the way.
I don't think that's really a condition.
Okay.
I mean, what would the condition be? That they haven't lied to us? Well, they swore that.
No, it's just part of the motion that we relied on testimony. That's all.
You're right.
Indeed.
Testimony presented.
Indeed, we
there.
have. We always do.
Yes,
We do.
yes.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Meekins and staff, and particularly cast of thousands for the applicant. It looks like it's going to be a great house when you're done. I hope your family will enjoy it. So if there's nothing else on this variance, we'll excuse the representatives of the applicant. And
Thank you all.
see what else.
Thank you all. Thank
Thank
you
you.
all. Appreciate you heaaring this out.
Thank you, Mr.
Enjoy.
Chairman and the board.
Thank you for your
Enjoy.
time.
Thank you.
Exercise well.
Yes. Make sure those mids stay in shape.
That's yeah. Good, Dr. Chen. I love it. Thank you all.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, any other business to come before the board tonight?
Well, Bob, I would like to make my announcement.
Yes, Jackie, you have the floor.
Oh,
Sorry, I accidentally misclicked and sent her to the attendee list. I'm bringing her back in now.
So soon.
Uh-oh. Come on, Bob. What are we gonna do?
I don't know.
Jackie, come back.
Jackie, I'm very sorry.
Too early, Jackie, too early.
Okay, so I filed for my parole papers and my last day is November 30th.
Oh, Jackie.
So I will miss all of you very much. So count yourselves lucky that you're among the few that I am going to miss. It's just time. You know, you reach a point where you just know it's time. So
Sure.
and it's my time.
Jackie, I don't know how we would have managed without you. How many times you've saved my butt and saved the board from getting itself into embarrassing, if not illegal situations.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure that, you know, as we carry on, you know, we have a new director and that, you know, things will go just fine. I think both Kim and Mike are, although, you know, fairly new, you know, are really, really picking up. You know, they had a lot of work, did a lot of work when they were in their previous employment, where they're really familiar with a lot of the city regulations and everything, which has really helped them acclimate faster. And we're gonna, you know, so that's a real plus.
Do you know who the director will designate to be the liaison to the board?
We'll have to discuss that with him.
Okay.
Well, I expect we'll see you in November, Jackie.
Right,
Or are you
I'm coming,
leaving
yeah, I'll
early?
be in the last two meetings, November 7th, and I don't think, well, I'm not sure. We're continuing the appeal till November 7th, right?
That's right. And there's nothing.
But I don't think we have anything else to have on that agenda on November 7th, except that. And I don't know if we have anything to advertise yet for the second meeting in November, but
No, I won't be around for a second meeting in November.
okay, so
I'll be out celebrating your retirement.
oh, that's really sweet. Okay, so we need to figure out if we're going to have a
Egypt to
quorum.
celebrate your retirement.
Kimberly, you're still on the meeting, right?
Yes, I'm
Totally.
here. I am
Do you
here.
think you can send out an email to everybody to see if we're going to have a quorum for both November 7th and November 18th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when we'll lock that down now.
Yeah, it may have been a mistake for me to try to excuse people. It kind of backfired on us tonight. But,
Well,
but we
So
managed
then
that.
I
Thanks
did
to
send
Mike, we got
Hillary,
through it.
right, I did send Hillary another email today, you know, saying that we were starting to have quorum problems and it would be really helpful if they would fill the alternate position, because when we had an alternate, you know, we didn't get into these jackpot situations.
Yeah.
So this is like the 5th time I've asked about it, and I think Bob, you've asked also, correct?
Well, would you like to be on the board after you retire?
No, I don't live in the city, and I wouldn't want to be in the board if I lived in the city. I'm
that's a
done.
comfort.
I'm really
it's a comfort
done
to
with,
know.
I mean, I don't want to, I'm really, you know what, I'm done. I'm done thinking about planning and zoning and stuff that goes on in the city. I can't do it anymore.
Well,
I'm not even going to take phone calls,
not even from us.
not from anyone.
No.
So,
well, I guess I
I'm-
better say the
I'm
good
done.
words now. I better tell
Right.
you now that I appreciate the hard work you've done and
We have a new
the good humor.
director and he's setting a new tone for the department. And I think it would work better if, you know, he just started off that way and I wasn't, you know, saying, oh, well, I think you should do this way. He has to, everybody has to figure it out. We have all these new people. So it'll be
Well,
fine.
So I hope we'll see you on the 7th. If not.
Oh, yes, I'll
I
be in
certainly-
the, yes,
Oh, good.
absolutely.
All right.
I will be in,
Good.
I will be there on the 7th, and I will continue to do my job until November 30th.
All right. I'll try to keep myself together till then and
Okay.
say a few kind words.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Mike. Okay.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn unless there's other earth-shattering developments like that.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Night all.
Thank you,
Bye,
Good
Jackie.
night. Good night, Jackie. Take
We
care.
love you.
Love
love
you.
you too.